This is WFYI News Now. It's September 26th, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. On today's show, Indy's animal shelter will continue emergency-only intake as it deals with ongoing overpopulation issues. $3.6 million to support expanded access to mental health and substance abuse services. Terre Haute's singing janitor wins big on TV. And the FSSA says the launch of a new long-term care program for Medicaid members is going well, but some providers disagree.
For our side, it's hard to bring you specific ones because of the fact that they're just terrified. They just don't want to come forward.
Those stories coming up. But first, a West Lafayette middle schooler will embark on a 2-day space adventure, visiting NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida and possibly seeing a rocket launch. Anahita Rai has dreamed of being an astronaut since she was 5 years old. Now at 11, she is one step closer to that goal as a member of the 2024 Space Kids Press Squad.
It feels really great that I'm one of 8 kids in the entire nation that gets a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Rai will travel to Orlando, tour Blue Origin's rocket park, and visit the Kennedy Space Center, all while learning interview skills from a professional reporter and talking to astronauts. If weather permits, she will also get to see a live rocket launch. Sharon Hagel is the founder of Space Kids Global. She helped create the program and says it can inspire kids to explore STEM opportunities.
So if we can excite these kids early on by making learning fun again, we can bring the possibility of space to kids everywhere.
The date for the rocket launch has yet to be finalized, but officials say it could happen this fall. Rai hopes to take a lot of pictures and share this experience with her peers at home. Indianapolis's animal care shelter will continue emergency-only intake procedures. WFYI's Jill Sheridan reports the move is in response to ongoing overpopulation problems.
Crates line the hallways and offices at the aging shelter facility on the west side of Indianapolis. It's been over capacity for years now. Indianapolis Animal Care Services announced a new population management plan to combat overcrowding. Don Olson with the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services says it's part of a long-term strategy.
Not only do we want to cut down on the amount of overcrowding at the shelter, but this is our way of, helping make things easier on the staff, increasing available space, and improving medical care too.
The shelter began operating with limited intake earlier this month after a dog unexpectedly passed away. The new shelter under construction will be twice the size of the current facility. It's scheduled to open in 2026. I'm Jill Sheridan.
Indiana has been awarded roughly $3.6 million to help support expanded access to mental health and substance abuse services in clinical settings. As WFYI's Ben Thorpe reports, the funds come from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and are part of a nationwide effort to expand care.
The competitive grants were awarded to some 400 community health centers across the country, including 6 in Indiana. Carol Johnson is the administrator of the Health Resources and Services Administration. She says that their data show that community health centers aren't meeting the demand for either mental health or substance abuse services.
We've got to be integrating mental health and substance use disorder treatment into primary care, in the place where people have a trusted provider, where they feel comfortable, where they're most likely to raise their mental health or substance use disorder concerns.
Long-term, Johnson says the hope is to require that the roughly 1,400 community health centers across the country provide mental health and behavioral health services. I'm Ben Thorpe.
Terre Haute's singing janitor Richard Goodall won Season 19 of America's Got Talent on Tuesday night. Goodall is best known in Vigo County schools. The 55-year-old has worked as a custodian in the school corporation for 23 years. West Vigo Middle School principal Chris Tanner says teachers and students are thrilled.
As I tell everybody, Richard is a very humble person. And what you see on TV, he's just like that in person. So it makes it very easy for us here at West Vigo to support him and to want to be a part of this whole process with him.
The city of Terre Haute and the Vigo County School Corporation are planning to host a coming home celebration for Goodall when he returns. And for our final story today, The Family and Social Services Administration says the launch of the new long-term care program for Medicaid members over 60 is going well. But as Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports, several pathways for aging program providers are raising concerns about aspects of the implementation.
Among other things, providers brought up concerns around having to wait for reimbursements and issues with contacting the companies managing the program. Leslie Huckleberry is with FSSA. She says if providers or Medicaid members have examples of issues, they can reach out to FSSA with that information so the agency can look into it. But Judith Schoon, a certified senior advisor, told FSSA while she's tried to connect members to the agency, some are afraid they might lose their services.
For our side, it's hard to bring you specific ones because of the fact that they're just terrified. They just don't want to come forward.
Huckleberry says there should be no punitive action if a member brings forward a concern. She encourages members to reach out to the Pathways for Aging Member Support Services. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.